This is Straight Up Mortgage with Madi, and today we are going to talk about variable income. So, I had a comment under one of my videos asking me to do a video on calculating variable income. So, here it is. All right, so here we have our standard verification of employment form. I'm not going to do too much different screen sharing. I'm just going to have a conversation with you, and hopefully, my knowledge can pass on to you as to kind of how to navigate your file or your income when you have a borrower that is utilizing a variable income in order to qualify for their loan. So, today we're going to talk about overtime, commission, bonus, that type of variable income, and how to attack it, things to take into account when calculating it, etc., etc. So, for this example, right, we have an applicant that has been at their job for, let's say, over 10 years, and this is what their overtime income lineup is. I chose these numbers. Let's just say that they have base pay, and let's just really take into account that this is an example, because obviously if a person made $15,000 a year, they're most likely not going to qualify to purchase a house. But we're just going to use these figures for example purposes. So now when it comes to overtime, commissions, and bonus, in this case, we have a borrower. Let's just say, okay, sorry, one more thing. The year to date, let's say that this is through, we are going to use, let's say, June 6th of 2021. I don't even know if you can see that, but that says June 2021. So here we have for 2019, right? 2019, 2020, 2021. Okay. So over here we have 2020. Our borrower made $10,000 in income, or in overtime income. For 2020, our borrower made $15,000 in income, in overtime income. And now this year to date is showing overtime income of $8,000, and that is just in the first 6 months, right? So let's just see here. If you take a look from 2019 to 2020, you see that it's increasing. So that's great. The trend, because that's the big thing here, we are really taking a close look at the trend. And the trend is showing from 2019 to 2020 that it's increasing. And from 2020 to this year to date here, we're using June, it's 8,000. If you do the math, it's still increasing. So this is one of those things where it's just like, okay, this is great. We can just take an average. You can, if you want to be the most conservative, would be to average all of this. So it would be 12, 24, 6 months, that's 30 months. So we would take an average of everything over 30 months. So let's actually do this math. You'll take 10,000 plus 15,000 plus this 8,000 and divide it by 30 months. Okay, that didn't work out. And divide it by 30 months, and you would get $1,100 per month. Another way to look at it is if you did 8,000 plus this 15,000, that's 12 plus 6 months, that's 18. So we're going to divide that 23,000 by 18, and you get $1,000 $277, which is a little bit more income, but we want to go the most conservative route. And if your borrower qualifies at the most conservative amount, go with that number. So if in this case, if you do it over the 2.5 years and your borrower qualifies, just use that number, because then when we're selling the loan, the investor can see that we use the most conservative figure to give or to get their income. Will we be able to use the last 18 months? We really could. So if your borrower really needed that income, you could use the last 18 months. But in this event, if you have a borrower where they're good, using that most conservative number, which is using the average of the 30 months, it's lower amount. But if your borrower qualifies, utilize that amount. Okay, so let's say the trend went down, right? So for 2019, the borrower made $10,000. 2020, the borrower made a total of $8,000 in commission income, but then the year to date is $8,000. So now we see that there's a decline, or there was a decline. Even though now the trend is going up, we still have to take a look at this decline that happened last year, and we need to question what happened. Why is it that in 2019 he made $10,000, but in 2020 there was a dip, but now it's 2021, we're back up, right? So what we would do is we would find out what's going on, what happened. Asking the borrower, asking the employer, why was there a decline in income? Now, 2020, perhaps this borrower has a good reason, like COVID, right? So maybe something happened where because of COVID, they weren't offering as much overtime, or maybe he had a leave of absence because of COVID, something of that nature. If we document that, then what we would do is still utilize this figure. So even though we know that the reason why he has this decline, we would utilize this number, this decline number, so this 8,000 over 12 months, and that would be the qualifying income that we would use. If the borrower, of course, is if the borrower qualifies with this amount. Now, let's just say the borrower does not qualify with the 8,000. What if we really needed, to use this 8,000 year to date, which would be more income than this 8,000 over 12 months, right? Because 8,000 over 6 months is more than 8,000 over 12 months. Okay. So with that being said, in the event that your borrower had declining income in the previous year, but now they're in an upward slope and they actually really need to use that year-to-date income, if the supporting documentation is showing like it makes sense, like, okay, it's because of COVID, that's why it went down, then we can average the last 2 years. But the most conservative route, the way to go first and to see if it qualifies, is to use this declined number. Hopefully that comes out clear. And when I'm saying decline number, I'm talking about this 8,000. And again, we would be taking this 8,000 and dividing it by 12, and that would be the amount that we would be using in this scenario. What if the year-to-date amount is the one that declined? 4,000. Now, what if this is the amount that declined? Again, we would have to find out why it declined that much. And as long as it makes sense, we'd have to utilize this. I mean, there are some times where you can average, with the past year, but we're talking about using the most conservative number, and we'd have to utilize the overtime. As a processor, that's what I would do. I would just use this year-to-date amount. If the underwriter reviews the file and adds that in, or if they feel like they're comfortable with it, then let them do it. But always just use the most conservative number, because you don't know where your file is going. You don't, as far as the underwriter, you don't know what that underwriter will be comfortable with when it as far as using when it comes to variable income. So always just go the route of the conservative figure. And then again, in the event your borrower really does need this income, then you're going to need supporting documentation, and it has to make sense in order for this loan to be a go. So you can have income that's declining, but you just have to make sure that it's addressed and that it makes sense as to why that income declined. And because, again, when we are calculating variable income, we're essentially looking at the past to make a prediction of the future. And it's not hard. I'm talking about trends and things of that nature, but it's really just, if you borrowed money to someone and you're expecting to get it back, if you have a history with that person, or if that person has a history of not paying that money back, then you're going to make a smart decision to not borrow them that money, right? So think of it in the forms of a verification of employment. Of course, if you are a lender and you're reviewing this person's money and you see that they have money that's declining, that's going to raise a red flag, because you're like, are they going to be able to pay me back? So if you are going to use the income, if it makes sense to you, and they're like, okay, you know what? They're going uphill. This business is doing well. Look, they've been in existence, or at least this person has been working there for the past 10 years, and they get overtime income. Here we only have documented 2.5 years, but it looks like, for 2019 it was increasing. 2020 it was increasing some more. Okay, maybe there was a little dip. Why was there a dip? Okay, it makes sense. Even though it makes sense, I'm not gonna just reward them for this $15K that they got last year. I'm gonna hit them with the loss and say, okay, if they can qualify with the amount of the dip, then this is solid income. So I hope that makes sense for you. And when you are calculating, whether it's overtime, commission, bonus, you want to look at it the same way. You're looking at the trend. You want to see how this borrower has been getting paid over the last couple years. You want to make sure that it's steady and increasing. If this is just steadily increasing 10,000, 15,000, and now let's say when we get to the end of the year, they've made 20,000. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful increase. I would just, average the last 2 years, and that's perfect. But things get tricky when things start declining, right? So it declined from 2019 to 2020. When it declined, what was the problem? What was the issue? Once it makes sense, if it makes sense, you should be good to go. I have to say you should be, because nothing's certain, but you should be good to go as long as it makes sense. Oh, because of COVID, the borrower is out X, Y, and Z. Oh, the borrower had maternity leave. They just had a baby, so they weren't having that whole time overtime. Things of that nature, because this is real life and life happens. So while life happens, just make it make sense. That's what our lender wants to know. That's what the underwriters want to know. Just let's make it make sense, because ultimately we need to sell this loan to Fannie or Freddie, and they want it to make sense to them, and we need them to buy the loan, so we need it to make sense to them. So hopefully that this video was able to help you with understanding how to calculate variable income. I'll see you on the next video.